Roguelikes might have been enjoying their moment in the sun in recent years, but Everspace 2 shows that procedural generation isn't the only way forward. The original Everspace is a cool space fighter roguelike, but the sequel has changed course toward a more traditional action RPG style, and its series of missions across an open region of space feel a lot more in the vein of Freelancer or Rebel Galaxy Outlaw as a result. But it holds on to its free movement system, which makes its combat stand out from other space shooters in style. There's already a fair amount of it to explore at its early access launch, and it keeps things interesting by mixing in some puzzle solving to break up the flashy dogfights. The story that's here is a fairly strong start. It picks up our clone pilot from the first game, except with the interesting twist that this time we're on his last life. If he dies now, he's dead for good. Granted, the main character's a tad on the bland side, as you might expect from a disposable clone. He only really shows passion when he's ranting about ramen. However, his companion characters, including the returning AI sidekick, have a bit more personality. Even the one-off characters that hand you side missions at spaceports have above-average flavor in voice acting.
Noodles made to the best precision and highest hygiene standards.
There are no dialogue decisions to make to guide the story, but at least it's going to somewhat interesting places. Primarily, Everspace 2 is about combat. Coming from other recent space fighter games like Star Wars Squadrons and Rebel Galaxy Outlaw, it was a minor struggle to get back into this particular groove of flying. Instead of opening up a throttle to move forward at a set speed like an airplane, your ship moves much more like a character in a typical shooter. This descent-style dogfighting is plenty of fun once you get the hang of it, and it lets you do a lot of strafing maneuvers you don't see elsewhere. Fights are mostly about switching between weapons as needed to knock down enemy shields or armor, bidding out the occasional homing missile, dumbfire rocket, or mine as you go. You've also got to manage your cooldowns effectively so you can activate your ship's special abilities at the right moment to zap or cripple your most powerful enemies, or just make a quick getaway. Enemy variety isn't huge, but it's good enough to keep things from getting repetitive. I knew I had to approach a fight differently when I spotted a heavily armored enemy with what amounts to a space shotgun, or when I had to take out certain drone types before they could ensnare me or self-destruct at close range. Large capital ships are rare in the early story missions, but it's fun to pick off their turrets when they show up. Then you collect the sweet loot from the aftermath of the satisfying explosion effects. There's a pretty good variety of pew-pew-pew lasers, from rapid-fire chain guns to sniper and shotgun-style blasts and more, and uncommon, rare, and superior gear comes with very useful bonus effects. Just as importantly, the fine level of movement control lets Everspace 2 do a lot more with puzzles. Many of its loot rewards are hidden behind obstacle courses and stashed in corners an X-Wing couldn't reach. You'll be sent to do things like pick up key items and move them into position to unlock containers and passageways where you'll have to navigate through tight spaces on a ticking clock. Some of this led to more downtime than I'd have liked because your sensors aren't especially long range at first, so you have to aimlessly cruise around and look for stuff. And sometimes areas are excessively dark, but it is great to have something to do besides shoot everything I see. Everything looks and sounds great, including the entirely new planetary environments. The visual variety and eye-catching detail they add is striking when you've been staring into the void of space for a while. That's not to say the space areas are visually monotonous, far from it. Everspace 2 does an excellent job of being pretty to look at, with colorful backdrops and atmospheric effects highlighting large asteroids and platforms in the distance to entice you to explore them. And you're sent into caves and massive shipwrecks on a regular basis. What's jarring is the transition between zones. Jumping in and out of faster-than-light travel causes a brief loading screen, the kind most games these days conceal with a flashing animation effect or something. In total, it took me about 13 hours to burn through all of Everspace 2's early access story, and that's factoring in frequent stops to rack up XP and loot at unexplored locations that popped up on my map as I warped between missions. It also comes to an abrupt end during what feels like the start of a new mission instead of at a logical breakpoint. The other obvious sign that this is a work in progress, aside from the very occasional bugs and the watermark in the corner of the screen saying so, is that a few of its storyboard-style cutscenes are placeholders that just give you the gist of things. And though the ending screen urged me to explore the remaining side missions and activities, I definitely lost some motivation to grind for better loot after the plot ran out. That's also when it becomes apparent that Everspace 2 doesn't have much by way of a commodities market. Yes, you can buy and sell boxes of things like liquor and ramen for different prices at different ports, but there's no system for keeping track of it all. So setting up a trade route just doesn't feel like a practical means of earning money right now. Everspace 2's early access version is off to a great start, with enough mostly polished content to allow for at least a dozen or so hours of gleeful blasting, puzzle solving, and looting in space. Dropping its predecessor's roguelike format feels like a good decision thanks to a promising story and a good amount of hand-built content. It's just not all there yet, so when the story cuts off, so does a lot of the motivation to continue. This is definitely one to look forward to when it comes out of early access, which is currently planned for some time in 2022. For more space battles, check out our reviews of Star Wars Squadrons and Rebel Galaxy Outlaw. And for everything else, stick with IGN.